The following episode will contain spoilers. You have been warned.
You're listening to Cinema IRL, the podcast that throws you into the movie and asks the question, what would you do? Sometimes you just have to learn to let go. After watching Memoir of a Snail, do you think Amber and Scott learned to let go? I doubt it. And now, Cinema IRL.
I wish I could switch places for just one day.
What would you do?
Put yourself in my shoes.
How do we handle this?
What would you do?
Put yourself in my position.
What would you do?
Now it's your turn.
Stop. Motion time.
Yes, this episode is indeed about a stop motion film, and I love stop motion. So our film is called Memoir of a Snail. Grace Puddle is a book-loving, snail-collecting misfit that falls into a series of misfortunes after being separated from her twin brother Gilbert. Despite her hardships, inspiration and hope arise when Grace begins a friendship with an eccentric elderly woman named Pinky. I enjoyed this film. It was entertaining.
It was a fun little film.
So even though it was stop motion animation, this was absolutely an adult film. So let's just make sure everybody understands that.
Oh, yes. Please do not think, I'll take my kids to see
lots of adult jokes in there for sure.
Lots of boobies.
Yeah, and a masturbation joke and all kinds of stuff in there. So our main character, Grace, we see her in her origin story of her and her twin brother Gilbert being born into a world and having their mom basically die during childbirth, and then their dad dying when they were younger, and I don't know, maybe 10, 11, 12, something like that. Hard to tell with stop motion animation. We're not seeing actual human beings.
Young enough that they got taken into child protective services, so.
Yeah, and they were split up, sent into foster care, and Grace ended up with a couple of swingers and no other kids, and Gilbert wound up basically with a
cult.
Yeah, an extremely religious family that had 4 other sons, and they labored all day at their apple farm and had all their wages donated back to Jesus, who then the dad took the Jesus money and used it to buy alcohol.
I just praying there. Sorry.
Yeah, they spoke in tongues.
And that actually was probably almost exactly what they did.
It is true. So they communicated by letters. And Grace, Grace struggled being a little bit different, and she had a love of snails because her mom loved snails. And it was kind of a way of her connecting with her mom after her mom passed. And she collected snails, and she was kind of an outsider, and her swinger foster parents kind of just left her alone a lot. And ultimately, they just left probably when she was through school, and she met a guy named Ken who seemed to like her, but it turned out Ken just kind of had a little bit of a fat fetish.
He liked her a lot. Oh, no, he liked a lot of her.
That's clever. Yes, he tried to make her fat and was successful.
Oh, yeah, he was pretty successful. Man, apparently, lay off the sausages, homie.
Yeah, fed her sausages and milkshakes with duck fat in them to make her fat, and then took pictures of her fat and had a secret scrapbook of her fat photos, which she ultimately found out and broke up with him. But through all of this, she met a friend named Pinky, who is an eccentric, fun-loving, older woman who wound up being her pal, her gal pal, even though she was old enough to be her grandmother. And they had a friendship, and ultimately Pinky dies, and Grace is left on her own. And even though we think her brother Gilbert is killed earlier in the film when his wacko foster family tries to electrocute the gay out of him, turns out he actually didn't die, and he finds his way back to Grace in the end, and Grace and Gilbert are together. So that's our synopsis.
I say, if you haven't seen the movie, you just did. You just heard it.
Yeah.
When we first met Pinky, there was a part of me that wanted the first word out of her mouth to be Narf.
It's time to take over the world. No. Pinky was a fun character. She was the way that I would like to think I will be when I get to be Pinky's age. Just You are comfortable in your body. You are comfortable with who you are. You don't give a darn about pleasing anybody else because you have lived enough years on this planet where you've realized life is short. Be yourself, be happy, and screw anybody else.
Narf.
So I can't identify with the whole twin element. Gilbert and Grace were twins, and as such, they had a very strong connection, especially since their mom died and then their dad died. And a lot of the film kind of deals with their separation and struggle, and Grace really finding herself feeling very alone in this world without her brother to protect her and rely upon her.
I mean, it becomes a very what would you do? Your family's dead, and you get put in a new family, or
and one was a
dead
neglectful
separated.
Yeah, so Gracie was put in basically a neglectful family, or just an absentee family, and Gilbert was put in a family that was actually downright dangerous because of their extreme religious views and their child labor ethics. And that was not a positive situation at all. I mean, once your foster mom hooks you up to electricity trying to get the Satan out of you because she found out you're gay, that's obviously pretty messed up.
You were making out with her other kid.
Yeah. I think, frankly, it doesn't matter who Gilbert was making out with. He would have gotten the same treatment because she was wackadoodle.
Yes.
So what would you do in any of our characters' shoes today, whether it be Grace or Gilbert or Pinky or the wackadoodle family that Gilbert found himself with, or Ken, the fat junkie?
I mean, it really was a scenario of essentially having to restart over and over and like losing either everything or losing everything important and then trying to figure out where to pick up and go from there.
Yeah, and it's also a look at what it feels like to lose everyone and then trying to hang on to that in some way. So, for instance, Grace, her love of snails because her mom loved snails became this hoarding obsession for her that she just got snail decor after snail pencil sharpener, snail photographs to snail Band-Aids to snail condoms, anything that had a snail, she got.
Oh, she wasn't?
Yeah, no, that was actually in there. So eventually she is sitting in a sea of her collection of snails that has started off on the walls looking very nice to very full walls to then all of the floor. And she's basically perched on her bed surrounded by all of the snails. And she has literally created a box for herself, a cage for herself, in the fact that she is trapped with all of these snails in an effort to keep her mom alive, to keep that prior version of herself alive.
Yeah. I mean, I actually understand that thought and mentality a little bit. And sometimes it's fine and it's healthy, and sometimes it's not. Like, I think this was obviously an example of it being fairly unhealthy, but like, I know my own mother collects a ton of Dallas Cowboys stuff that reminds her of her dad. And I think that's actually done in a healthy way. She's basically collecting memorabilia, which can gain value. And on top of having value, sentimental value as well. So, but even she, I know, knows, okay, I can only collect so much. I have to kind of pick and choose here and be smart about it. And that's where sometimes you can go with the hoarding, is that I want everything. Like I know one guy who's got like over 300 jerseys.
That'd be you, right?
Because he won't stop collecting jerseys.
That'd be you, right?
Yeah.
So the interesting analogy here is the snail. And this is something Pinky ends up leaving in a letter to Grace that Grace reads after Pinky dies. And it basically talks about how snails only move forward. They can't go backwards. They can't go backwards in their tracks. And that it's important for Grace to move forward, like the snails she's been honoring and loving and collecting her entire life, in the fact that you have to have the ability to move forward in life and not create a cage for yourself that keeps you stuck in the past. And that's something that it has a lot of layers to it, because when people die, it's very easy to want to keep them alive in some way. And that is definitely what Grace was doing with the snails, because left to her own, I'm sure she wouldn't gravitate to, oh, I love snails, but it was something that made her feel close to her mom. And I'm sure if you took a survey of people in a similar situation, had a loved one pass, you probably see that. And it's easy to do, I suspect, to keep yourself in that cage because it feels safer than moving forward.
I mean, without getting too into personal details, I mean, I feel like this is an area that you definitely know better than I do.
But I mean, I don't collect things because a loved one did. And that's definitely what Gracie did.
Because your loved one collected enough things that you can get through them, and then still you're like, I'll keep a few of these.
Yeah. I mean, I understand wanting to honor someone who passed, but definitely, I mean, I'm not a collector of things because anybody else was. But the whole film was an interesting testament of how people can build their own cages, and that we make decisions, we put ourselves in environments, we put ourselves in relationships that keep us stuck and unable to move forward. And lots of times it's not anyone else doing it to us, it's us doing it to us.
Yeah, I mean, you couldn't be more right. And I think everyone does this to a certain point where sometimes you will gravitate towards something because it is familiar. And it feels good to be around, at least in the short term, but it doesn't let you grow as a human being moving forward. So, like, eventually, like, these people who were important to you, I'm okay with the idea of keeping them alive in a small fashion. But there's a difference between keeping them alive and keeping yourself surrounded by them. And I think that was sort of what we got here. It was like everything she had reminded her of her mother. Like, it was like you can't ever escape that sorrow because it's always around you. And that's when it's unhealthy.
Yeah. And when we create our own cages, which was actual phrase used in the film, we do what our brain sometimes frequently defaults to is safety, stability. And when we create our own cages, everything's safe. Everything is known. Everything is expected. Like, we limit the outside exposure because that's scary, that's unknown, that's dangerous, that's instability, that's uncertainty. And our brain wants to keep us feeling easy and okay and comfortable. And that's what we can do to ourselves when we do create our own cages.
Yeah, it's super important to live your life. And I know that seems a little basic, but it can get real easy getting trapped in the past. Real easy. And boys and girls, life is fleeting. It is short. We have no idea whether or not we will be here tomorrow. Well, I mean, I have an idea. I probably will be here tomorrow. But you know what I mean. I mean, anything weird can happen and your life can change in an instant. So don't wait to live it. Live it. Don't let yourself wallow in the past. Figure out a way to get past it. Now, again, I am not saying get rid of everything. Have a place. Have a place that's special to you, like in your home or something, that's where these things can go. And it can remind you of the amazing, wonderful things that person or those people brought into your life. But don't have it be all consuming because you'll just get stuck. You'll get stuck in your cage.
Yeah, and that's definitely a line to be aware of. Like, I have a friend that had a dog who passed, and she has a little area in her apartment where she has a literal shrine to this dog. And she has the dog's ashes, and she has the dog's picture, and she has a couple other little trinkets. And, like, I'm all for people processing in whatever way that looks like. And grief looks different to everybody. But it's just a little corner. Like, if you had 20 pictures on your walls of that dog or that person and immersed yourself in everything that made you feel that loss. I think that goes to what you were saying earlier about something being unhealthy.
Yeah, I mean, like, I like to use Billy as an example here. Billy was a dog of ours who passed in December. And there's a really cute drawing that Amber got me for my birthday of Billy near my side of the bed. And the little urn, there's ashes, and it's got this, like, it's a little thing. It's all right there. And that's all of Billy's stuff. Is I see him and I'm reminded about him. And additionally, I believe it's currently 3 times a week at 12:06 p.m. Alexa reminds me to call Billy. And there's a reason it's 12:06. Don't worry about that. But I call him. Hey, Billy, come on, Billy. And it makes me happy because I get to think about him. Like it happens enough that it doesn't become an afterthought, but not so much that I feel trapped by it, because I miss the hell out of that dog.
Yeah, and I think there's definitely a difference between remembering in a way that makes you smile and remembering in a way that makes you feel sad and alone. And our character Grace
Was sad and alone. And all of those trinkets and mementos and purchases, and she ultimately started stealing Snail stuff, just made her feel that much more lonely. But if you can remember someone, if you can look at something that they enjoyed or treasured and you can smile, like, that's good. Les Brown has a saying that really touched me and resonates with me, is that someone has 2 deaths. They have the death when they left this earth, and they have a second death when people stop saying their name. Yeah.
And
It's very true.
yeah, because, depending on what your family dynamic is, that might have a generation or 2 at best, and then there's no one left to say that name. And if your family's smaller, there's fewer people to say that name. So that was actually something that I found really profound and something that stuck with me personally.
Okay. Final thoughts. I just want to, what would you do? I would like to give homeless people blankets and Christmas lights just in case I'm ever caught for theft later and that homeless person ends up being my judge.
Okay, yes, an obscure reference to the film, but probably not bad life advice.
I mean, be nice to others. You never know when it can come back around.
And hopefully you see the film and that makes sense to you.
Yes.
We hope you enjoyed our episode. Thank you for listening. And to catch all the new episodes, please subscribe. We release 2 to 3 episodes weekly, so we'll have new content regularly. Until next time.